Hi guys, this is Jamie from Engadget and welcome to our overview of the One SV from HTC. It fits into the series, unsurprisingly, between the low-end One V and the slightly higher spec One S. Hopefully you'll agree that straight away we can see it's a good looking device. The front here is covered with one piece of Gorilla Glass and there are three capacitive buttons below. The back and home buttons and the dual function button on the right, which takes you to the task manager or becomes the menu key if you press and hold. You'll see the small HTC logo above the screen, as well as the earpiece, which hides a small LED for notifications, and a 1.6 megapixel camera. The earpiece does tend to attract dust and pocket fluff, but a quick blow will clear that out easily. On this model, supplied by UK network EE, we've got a slightly off-white back, which is curved, nice and tacky to grip. A sunken black HTC logo is centre stage. Up here there's a 5 megapixel camera with flash, and at the bottom a neat speaker grille with grey 4G LTE and Beats audio branding. The model available on Cricket in the US is bright red on the back with a darker metallic red rim, and the earpiece up front is also red. By the way, the camera doesn't stick out at the back like the One X or S, so it's not the first thing to make contact with surfaces. The back cover is removable, and behind it you'll find an 1800 mAh battery, micro SIM and micro SD slots. Round this might be metal but is actually plastic rim. There's the micro USB port down the bottom with the primary mic, volume rocker on the right hand side, power button, headphone jack and secondary mic on the top edge, and a bare left hand side. It's solidly built but not noticeably heavy, and pulling it around will tell you there's no hidden flaws that creak. The device is quite thin on the sides, and as the back is slightly larger than the front, those sides taper inwards. This means you've only got a thin edge to grip onto, which we found slightly uncomfortable. The back plate sticks out a tiny bit also, which makes fingernail access easier, but it compounds the problem. Depending on what you're doing and the orientation in which you're holding it, it's more or less of an issue, but something that kept coming up during the time we've been using it. The screen is a 4.3 inch Super LCD 2 panel with 800 by 480 resolution, meaning it's 217 pixels per inch. Those numbers aren't very impressive, but we assure you that it holds its own against higher res screens. It's certainly better than the One S's screen, which is a Super AMOLED panel and packs a higher res 960 by 540 pixels into a screen the same size. Pixelation isn't a frequent occurrence, but it is noticeable on diagonal lines. HTC's Sense skin is scaled properly for the display, so the menu screen has a 4x4 grid of icons rather than 5x4 like the One S or X. Colour rendition, including blacks, is good, and you can't really fault the viewing angles. High definition media is obviously stretched due to the resolution, and some games don't have the detail you'd see on other more pixel packed screens. Overall, it's not the letdown you might expect when you first hear the figures, and you'll never suffer brightness problems even in strong sunlight. As we mentioned, the One SV is running HTC's Sense 4.1 UI over Android 4.0.4 Ice Cream Sandwich. It's a shame that a brand new handset doesn't have at least the first iteration of Jelly Bean, but an update can't be far off. We'll go over the internal specs shortly, but the clean UI works well with the screen and the hardware it's been afforded. If you're unfamiliar with Sense 4, check out our full review, but in short it's designed to be simple and functional, without unnecessary frills which demand greater resources. This particular model only had a negligible amount of bloatware pre-installed courtesy of EE, and it's easy to ignore. We won't talk exhaustively about the 1.6 megapixel front-facing camera. It'll do what you need it to, but the 5 megapixel shooter which faces away from you is worth a bit more discussion. While it's not quite on par with the 8 megapixel cameras of the One S and X, it's pretty decent in the right circumstances. HTC's imaging goodies are all there, an f2.0 lens, backside illuminated sensor and image chip, and features like HDR burst capture, simultaneous video and stills, panoramic shots and a slow-mo recording feature. We managed some great pictures in great conditions, and low light performance is more than acceptable if you've got a steady hand. There are a lot of settings to change if you know what you're looking for, but we found the default sharpness was a little bit high. The white balance settings were strange, and while auto did a great job, other settings were akin to setting colour filters, so we avoided using them. 1080p video recording was also fine, although it takes a second to start, meaning you could miss those opportunistic clips. On the other hand, still shutter speed was rapid, and the burst capture and still during video features worked nicely. Slow-mo recording was also fun to test out, but you sacrifice a ton of quality for the higher frame rate. It's not the best of smartphone cameras, but considering the 1.8 SV is a middleweight model, HTC could have gotten away with something much less competent, so we appreciate the effort. Performance is where the SV really shines, and as we said, navigating around the phone is swift, even if you try to trip it up. Not quite as fast as the 1X, but almost. Behind the glass, the SV has a 1.2 GHz dual-core Snapdragon S4 Plus with Adreno 305 GPU, 1 GB of RAM and 8 GB of storage, which you can increase with a microSD card of up to 32 GB. For connections, it's got all the radios up to LTE, Wi-Fi A, B, G and N, both 2.4 and 5 GHz, Bluetooth 4.0 and NFC. Almost all apps load in under a second, although GTA 3 takes significantly longer. When playing though, it will handle the middle graphics settings without trouble, even if the screen doesn't quite do the game justice. We had no problems browsing on the handset, with everything loading quickly, especially in the stock browser. We include full desktop sites in this statement, but it takes a brief moment to reset everything when you're zooming out from a page. Beats Audio is obviously present on the One SV, enhancing sound quality on the stock music player and through third-party apps like YouTube. The loudspeaker isn't anything special, and if you're in the habit of using it often, Beats Audio doesn't kick in unless something's plugged into the headphone jack, so that's worth noting. In our standard battery rundown test, the One SV's 1800 mAh pack died after 8 hours of looping video at 50% brightness. It's a fairly respectable time, but with moderate to frequent use throughout the day, you're going to need to charge it up each and every night. It might last 2 days if it's sleeping the vast majority of that time. During the review period, we tended to forget we were dealing with a budget offering, and in many ways, including looks, it's a very capable device. On the UK's only 4G provider EE, the One SV is free with a 2-year, £36 per month contract, the cheapest deal available on the network. In the US, the red version is available contract-free for $280 after a $50 mail-in rebate on Cricket. So there you have it, HTC's One SV.